Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. In this update, we're tracking this powerful upper level low that's starting to develop. And further to the south, we do have a warm sector where we are concerned about severe storms and heavier rainfall. But it's this upper level low that's going to be the culprit to bringing all that heavier snow in the coming days. So I appreciate all my subscribers out there. If you are new here, I'm pretty much here on a daily basis, giving you daily updates to keep you well ahead of the storm. So if you are new, hit the subscribe button and follow along throughout 2024. So right now, we're watching this system. So as it develops, we already have renewed winter storm watches in place for those areas into Fort Collins, back into Denver, as well as into Colorado Springs. But further to the southeast and southeastern Colorado, down into portions of Santa Fe, but especially there into the Texas Panhandle, that is renewed winter storm watches. They could be looking at 4 to 8 inches of heavy, wet snow across that region, and these will likely be expanded as it gets closer because they only put out winter storm watches, 24 to 36 hours out. So this one actually starts late Sunday night into the overnight hours, late Saturday night into the overnight hours on Sunday. But right now for today, we've got the warm sector still. So those areas into portions of the Ohio Valley actually experienced some record high temperatures yesterday. We could actually break some more today as plenty of warm air within that warm sector, well to the 70s there in Texas, back into near 70 in Arkansas, even the 60s going all the way further north into Illinois as well as into Indiana. So yeah, definitely plenty warm air out ahead of this main system that's starting to develop around the Four Corners regions. And as it does, this is what it looks like right around that Saturday night time frame, overnight, Sunday morning. We're starting to develop a little bit of an eye, actually a low pressure center. And if anything, the latest high resolution guidance actually dragged this just a tad bit further south, just a little bit further south. But we do have the warm sector still into the southeast corridor. Those areas could likely pick up some severe storms during the day on that Sunday time frame, and it's got a lot of water vapor content with it. I mean, look at this abundance amount of moisture that's just feeding in off that southwest flow. It's not going to be lacking precipitation, I can tell you that, because that's going to be plenty of inflow, and you've got the lift just to the northwest. So that's why we're concerned not only for severe storms, but also that heavier rainfall that could lead to a good 2 to 4 inches of more heavy rain across some of the areas that have picked up a lot of rain over the last couple of weeks. But here's the severe storms. The Storm Prediction Center has highlighted that slight risk for severe storms, especially for East Texas going to the day on your Super Bowl Sunday, but especially in here to Louisiana, back into the Mississippi region. We are susceptible to seeing those stronger storms could produce some larger hail and a spin up tornado or two. We actually saw that yesterday, unfortunately, in Wisconsin. There was that 2% that we talked about right around that 5, 6, 7 o'clock time frame. It did actually come to fruition. I think actually spun up 2 tornadoes up there. And that was the first time Wisconsin actually had a tornado in the month of February. So that kind of shows you how warm we are. And that looked like it actually could be a strong tornado. But the National Weather Service will be surveying the damage, and they'll be issuing that report after they find out all the analysis. But yes, there's the concern for Sunday. We do have a tornado risk in place, especially into those areas in southeastern portions of Texas, right there into the Beaumont-Port Arthur region, back into Louisiana, into Mississippi, into Alabama. The high resolution guidance is just now coming within range, and this will likely be fine-tuned in the coming days. But it's right around this area that we've got to be concerned within that warm sector. Very high dew points, some shear associated with that upper level low on the south side there. Yes, definitely a concern for severe storms, but it's all about the cold and the dynamic cooling of this snowstorm. These can be tricky, right? Because you're relying on this dynamic cooling aspect to cool the atmosphere another 5 to 7 degrees. And if wherever that occurs, that rain will be transferring to all snow, and it's a wet snow. It's a heavy snow. It's like the biggest flakes you can get because the water content value is very high with a system like this. So that's where you can pick up some pretty significant totals within this region, but you can also pick up some surprises where you're really not expecting snow and it's 38 degrees outside and it's all of a sudden raining, but then some of that starts to transfer into snow. And as that snow falls, then it would likely get a little bit heavier. So I do expect some areas that kind of aren't like, hey, I'm not going to get any snow. Yes, you probably are with this type of system because it can sneak up on you. And with this dynamic cooling, it's going to create its own little weather, if you will, right under that upper level low. But it's all going to get going on Saturday night, but especially heading into Sunday. And you can see the sharp temperature gradient of those 20-25 degree below average, and out ahead of it you got the warm air, right? So that's what it's actually going into. And then as it does, as that precipitation starts to fall and it cools all the layers of the atmosphere, the temperatures, the cooling aspect does actually start to reach the ground. So yeah, going into that Super Bowl Sunday, that noon time frame up in the Panhandle, temperatures by then should be right around the freezing mark, if not slightly below, right around where that low pressure is. But look just to the outside of there, we've got upper 30s, if not low 40s there in Oklahoma, out ahead of it, right? So as the low will continue to push off, and as the rain starts to fall, it's going to cool this atmosphere again another 5 to 7 degrees and be allowed to transfer that rain to the snow. So you can see it on the surface map. We've got that low pressure center about 1,004 millibar. Here's the latest NAM. It did in fact actually shift it just a slight further southward. But the heavier snow is likely to come to fruition in the Texas Panhandle. That's why they've already got the winter storm watches in place. It's rain starting the event in Oklahoma, in North Texas, and heading into East Texas. But I do feel as we get into the evening time frame on your Super Bowl Sunday, it's going to transfer to snow northwest of the Dallas-Fort Worth area into Oklahoma. So those areas into western Oklahoma should be all snow. Even into Oklahoma City should pick up at least a couple of inches from this system. And then northwest areas of the Dallas-Fort Worth area should likely get some snow. And it's not out of the question as this continues to move in, again, with temperatures, 38 degrees and even southeastern Oklahoma, and even portions right along the Red River could see for at least a time or two pick up some of those heavy wet snowflakes with this dynamic system. But there's going to be a lot of rain associated with it out ahead of it. So you got heavier rains into Arkansas through Louisiana, and then it shifts again back to that snow, right? So you should transfer to all snow going into that Monday morning time frame, and the Tulsa region into eastern Oklahoma. Can't roll out some wet snowflakes for a time or two. Nothing significant down there towards the Dallas region. But out here into Arkansas should pick up some snow. Then heading into Missouri, going into that Monday morning time frame. And then there's the rain, again, out ahead of it into Tennessee and back into Kentucky, and the snow behind it. So as this continues to lift to the northeast, it will continue to have that dynamic cooling aspect of the storm. Would likely get some snow into portions of Illinois, back into Indiana, and then heading into Ohio there as it gets into the northeast. Now, as it gets into the northeast, we're going to have some colder temperatures associated with it. So now it's transferring out of that dynamic cooling aspect of the storm. Then it's just transferring into a snowstorm, more or less, because the temperatures, you're not going to have to rely on that dynamic cooling process any longer, because the temperature is going to be plenty cold to snow into Tuesday morning, with well into the 20s here into Pennsylvania, into New York, and along the coast here into Massachusetts, into Connecticut, back into Rhode Island. All these areas are definitely plenty cold enough to allow those, that's all to be all snow once that low pressure kicks in. So, and there are some still uncertainties as this actually kind of phases together, and the timing once it gets into the northeast. Here's the latest European guidance as this pushes along. Notice a 986 millibar low pressure here off the coast there. and then the heavier snows inland. So this could be some even heavier snows across Pennsylvania, back into northern portions of New Jersey here, into Long Island, back into Massachusetts and Connecticut, into into Rhode Island here. And then as this continues off into Nantucket, the GFS is actually a little bit slower and it's not as progressive. It's not as fast. So if that situation occurs right at the same time frame, it would be even further back west still, and highlighting more snows for those areas into Indiana, into Ohio, and that would include some more snows for those areas into Kentucky as well, and getting into Pennsylvania. And if that does occur, it's going to allow to even deepen further. That one actually drops it down to a 980 millibar low pressure. But either way, we've got fairly significant event for heavy snows across those areas in the Northeast. Could pick up some decent totals after this is all said and done, as it goes into that, especially Monday into Tuesday. Could likely go into that Tuesday night time frame, as the low pressure will be off the south of Maine there as it continues to move off into Canada. But beyond that, we are looking at for a little bit colder air. So it's going to be transferring. We got some colder air coming in from the northwest flow. You can see the kind of the freezing line there. So for now, those areas are going to be pushing more snow opportunities back into Wisconsin, back into northern Illinois, into Michigan. And this is after the system moves through, going into that, say, Thursday timeframe, the 15th. And then we'll also be watching this system right here. This is another dynamic system just hanging off the west coast there. This one digs even further south than the one that's highlighted over the Four Corners region, along with, heavier precipitation coming in on the backside. So by the time we head into next weekend, things do get interesting for, further, even so those areas further south. So here's the overall ensemble guidance right now of some of the temperature anomalies as we head into next weekend. And then we'll be watching that pretty significant trough coming in off the west coast. And that's going to go into the southern portions of Texas and along the deep south here, along the Gulf Coast, as we do have at the same time heavier precipitation. Unfortunately, it does include California. So we have these relentless systems coming out off that El Nino that's really in full effect now, coming on off that flow. So we have several systems just kind of back to back, and we do get a little of a break in California, but the rains do look to come back by the time we head into next weekend with more heavy rain for pretty much the entire state of California again. That goes into the desert Southwest, but then you also have that other system that's hanging out into off the Pacific Ocean there, and off the coast of the Baja. That is the system. We'll see how actually cold we get, but we could have definitely some heavier rains for sure. And if we cold enough, we'll have to fine tune this and see if we can mix in any frozen precipitation with that. Yes, I'm talking areas well south, folks. That's what we're dealing with this kind of unique setup as we get into that middle part of February. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update where I protect you before and after the storm.